everybody. I'm Kathy Knipple. It's a course that will cover both printing on paper, making prints, serigraphs, or also textile printing, making fabrics, and other applications, because it's a very flexible medium, and you can do a lot of different things with it. It can be used industrially, graphic design, textile arts, printmaking. It's very, very flexible, and I want you to be aware of that, and I want you to get that feeling that this medium is really, really useful, and you'll be happy that you learned it. First, I want to tell you a little history about myself. I'm originally was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Lived there till I was about 9 or 10, I think, and then we moved up to northern Wisconsin, and we lived on the American Indian Reservation for 10 years, and I went to the reservation school, which was, well, I didn't know it at the time, but it was also very helpful in my background and my interest in arts, because we studied a lot of the Indian crafts and history, and it started me to get very interested in weaving, beadwork, leatherwork, and my father was also a photographer, and I was interested in photography. So I didn't know I was going to be putting all these elements together, but the silkscreen class puts it all together, because I can still do photography, I can do my textile works, I love to draw, so all of these things fit beautifully together into this class. When I went to, after I lived in northern Wisconsin, we moved to California and to Los Angeles, and I started going to school at Cal State Los Angeles. And my bachelor's degree was in art in general, so I took a lot of different art courses and also art education courses. And so I got my bachelor's degree in general art, so I did everything. Then for my master's degree, I decided I had to specialize, and I love fabric, so I specialized in textiles and fashion together. And I took every kind of textile course, from silkscreen printing, batik dyeing, natural dyes, weaving, every kind of textile, and sewing, pattern making, tailoring. So I got all of these skills all put together, and then I had to find a way to use them all together. And one of the most interesting classes that I could put them all together in was silkscreen. So I think we're going to try to explore a lot of different things that you can do, not just prints and not just textiles, but a little bit of everything, and even possibilities maybe for sculpture. Even in ceramics, some students get to print ceramic tiles with silkscreens. So there's a lot of things. One of the students was on a work study, and they got to work in a leather shop here in Florence making bags. Well, the leather shop gave him some leather, and he printed his leather, made his bag, did the linings, also printed in the spare time, because he also had to work and do their things. And another student had some kind of a workshop in a shoe place, and she printed leather as well, and was able to make a pair of shoes with her own print on it. So there's a lot of neat things you can do with this class. In California, when I was studying all my textile things, and I started to get really interested in making soft sculpture, which that's what they called it at the time, soft textile sculpture. And there was all the pop art things were going on, and there was Klaus Ollenberg making big hamburgers and things like that. So I decided, because I was going to school, commuting to school on the freeway, and saw for an hour to school and an hour back, I saw cars. But the main car I saw was little VW Volkswagens. And so I decided I was going to make small cars first. And I made a little car. Oh, and everybody just loved that little car. So crazy me, I thought, I'm going to make a full-size car. I don't know how I thought that. It was really hard. But I was in sculpture as well, thank goodness. And I was in welding. Although I didn't weld the whole frame for the car, I needed help. But I welded an entire frame to make my car with. And then I made the whole outer covering and the whole inside of the car in fabric, and lots of sewing and construction work. So this was my car. When I made it, that was for my master show, actually. That's me inside of it, very young girl at that time. So I made the inside, the outside, and I had it in a show at my master show. And the newspaper people were there, and the Los Angeles TV station filmed it and got me on TV, and then it got in the magazine and a bunch of newspapers. And Volkswagen finally ended up knowing about it, and they wrote me and said, "Do you still have this car?" would you sell it to us? And of course I would sell it to them because one thing, it was taking up all the space in my parents' garage and they had nowhere to put their car. So they sent this man out from the Englewood, New Jersey to see me, and he saw my car and said, yes, yes, we want it. We're making a Volkswagen museum, and we're going to put this in the museum along with other Volkswagen art that we're collecting. But he said, your piece will probably be the main piece. So he bought that and a number of small cars because he saw I made small cars. And he said, instead of just, Jaguars, and I want only Volkswagen cars, all the different models we have. So I had to make all the different models they had in the small version. I'll show you one of them. I kept one. Actually, this one was our car, the Volkswagen station wagon. So I made, first, this is how I got inspired, by making the little guys first. But then I did make the big one. But when he saw I had all these little ones, I had to make the Volkswagen people a whole set of little Volkswagen cars as well. So that got me into more sculptural kind of things. Plus my boyfriend, he became my husband, he was a sculpture major at Cal State. And I got in thinking more three-dimensional, partly because of him, I guess, as well. So then to Italy, how I got to Italy. My boyfriend at the time, who became my husband, Mr. Fuji, he came here on a Cal State program, and he thought Florence was amazing, fantastic. You have to come and join me here. It took a little courage to do that, but I did, and I came here, and I fell in love with Florence as well, and you're going to fall in love with it too. And I started doing things about Florence. I did a show at the Strozzi. I copied a whole wine shop and all the objects, the wine bottles, the food, the sandwiches, everything. I did the whole wine shop, and I put it up in the Palazzo Strozzi. This one here is another, and then I started doing, those things took up a lot of space. So then I started doing things that maybe didn't take up quite as much space, little quilts about Florence or people's houses. I did a lot of people's houses. And this one happens to be about our studio here in Florence. And when you come here, the way you find your way around on Via Guelph, when you see this great big green door that's set back from the street, that's the entrance to where the studio is. And I'll probably meet you to bring you here the first time, but if you're lost, you have to come later. You always look for this great big green door on the street. It's really large, and it's set back from the street a little bit, and we're inside of there. And here's the map of this part of Florence showing where the studio is, and that's my feet coming in. And this was all done with photo silkscreen, but I did my photo silkscreen on fabric and quilted it. So this is still photo silkscreen. This one is another one I did actually a couple years before because I moved down the street a little further. This was a previous studio. When you walk down Guelph, you'll see that too. It's because it's kind of funny with a door under a window. But that's also photo silk. This one I drew on top of the photo, so it's part photo, part drawing. And this is the map of Florence, the same map. And this happens to be the curtain that used to be in that window. I just took the real curtain, laid it on the screen in the darkroom, and exposed it. So sometimes you can find an object like lace, or like this is such sort of a lace, or feathers perhaps. Those things will photocopy right on the screen directly if you just lay them on the screen and photograph them, because they're really flat. Anything too bumpy you can't do, but anything that's pretty flat like lace, feathers, you can do. Another thing I like to do a lot, and Syracuse has a theater department, a theater teacher. I made this costume. I'm a costume maker. And this is all serigraphy, all screen printing, textile screen printing. And I worked a lot on this one. I took for inspiration, the capitals of the columns, the top, the plant forms that are in the capitals, and I took inspiration from that. But I also loved all the door knockers with the crazy gargoyles and monsters and masks. So on the bottoms of each of these petals is a little gargoyle. And then it's supposed to be sort of a big bird. I wore this for Venice Carnival, which you're going to be here during Carnival. If everything goes all right and COVID isn't too bad, maybe we can do some carnival things. So there's Venice Carnival. Via Reggio already announced they're doing the parade regardless for Carnival. So there's a lot of neat things for Carnival here that you can do, and maybe we can get inspiration from that for a lot of projects. Some of my students have made costumes and masks for Carnival, or they've taken neat photographs that we've used for our photo silkscreen project. So keep in mind that's one of the big events for February and March in Italy, all of Italy, most of Europe actually. Silkscreen has a long history, a very long history. It started out with just stencil making, and gradually they added a piece of silk to a frame with a cut stencil. And this was done in China in the year of 900 in the Song dynasty. And then not too long later, Japan got interested in it because it was a nearby country. And Japan developed it even further. And they used it to decorate kimonos and textiles. And they made very, very intricate cutout stencils. And the stencils were weak and they needed some support. So putting the silk with it, attaching the stencil to the silk, made it much stronger and they could use it easier. And so they developed the process silkscreen. And that's why it's called silkscreen, because they use the silk to hold the stencil together. Nowadays, with the silkscreen, it's not silk anymore, it's nylon, because things have evolved and changed. After it was in Japan, in the 18th century, it was brought to Europe as a technique for decorating textiles or borders and things like that. In the 30s, it started to be used more for art. I mean, I call the textiles art anyway, but art like contemporary art and things. But it really got a good start, the best start, in the 60s with the pop art movement. Andy Warhol especially developed it to the kind of silkscreen that we do for art nowadays. Andy Warhol, Roy Lichtenstein, Rauschenberg, they all did some screen printing. It was very popular then. And that's when the photo emulsion, which was done earlier in the century, but they didn't have it really developed fully yet, the photo emulsion process, until much later, pretty much when Andy Warhol started doing it in the 60s is when they finally got it sort of down to a real system. It was used industrially first, and then they turned it to art uses after that. And now it's such an amazing, flexible medium that you can do so many, many different things with it. You can do graphic design, you can do textile design, you can do prints, you can do all T-shirts, bags, every commercial posters, signs, everything can be done with screen printing. It's really, really, really flexible. So no matter what art area you're interested in, I'm sure there's one part of screen printing that you're going to like because it's really, really a flexible medium. And it's also relatively fast. At first, it takes you a little while to prepare the stencils and to get it on the screen. But once this screen is made, the printing is relatively quick, and you can make many copies, and that's what makes it so popular today and so useful as a technique. For your silk screen printing class, you're going to be using the frames that we have in the studio. These are professional silk screening frames. And first I'm going to give you this size here, the one with the lettering, Cinema Paradiso. And then if you do a larger project like a textile, I'll probably give you this next size, this slightly larger size. They are not silk, it's nylon, a special nylon, because now we have photo emulsion, and photo emulsion is a little bit too hard on real silk. But we used to use real silk for the screens a long time ago. So now they use nylon, special nylon that takes the photo emulsion well. We do our own coating of the screens. We put our own emulsion on. I have a dark room. We coat the screens ourselves with photo emulsion, Diazo photo emulsion. And when this photo emulsion is dry, we place our designs on the screen, on the back side of the screen, actually, this side of the screen. We place the design here. We put it in a vacuum table, and the vacuum table sucks the designs down to the screen. The designs are on acetate, and the design is sucked down onto the screen. And the big photo light exposure unit goes on and exposes the emulsion with whatever you drew on the acetate. And when you wash the acetate under slightly warm water, just warm water, the design sort of magically appears. Really, it's like magic. Everybody goes, wow! And the image starts to appear. And after about 2 minutes, the extra part washes away, where these white areas are. Washes away. And that's the part that's open, and that's the part where your ink will pass through and color your paper or your fabric. And then we print from this side is the side we print from when we pull the squeegee across. And if you're doing more than one color, this is a small poster. So we put 4 colors on one screen in this case. So this is the background, this is the lettering, and these are 2 other colors that go into that little poster. With a textile, I usually use the entire screen per color. So I won't let you do too many colors if you're doing a textile because it takes a lot of screens. But this one and this one go together. This is sort of the background color, and this one is the outline color. And the far one is also, and the far one over there are also textile designs. And this is a little poster. So, we're going to do all together for the class. We're going to start with a small print like this one so that you can learn the basic process without getting too complicated beyond what you're able to do. So we're going to start out sort of small to begin with this size. Then for the second project, after you've got the experience, you know how to print, you know how to cut the screens, you know how to expose them, you know how to prepare your drawing, then you can do a more involved project for the second one. And the third project, we're going to all do together something with a photograph, because now we can do that with photographs. Let me find a nice photograph here. Does this one show? This is like a student's photograph. She took a picture of her mother and something with a cloud, and we put the 2 images together for this print. To prepare our images, the first 2 projects we're going to do hand drawing projects. The third one we're going to do with photo emulsion or something with the computer. The first 2 we're going to do hand, because it's really important that we don't skip the hand drawing stencils so that you fully understand this process and how it originated and how it works. So this is a textile print that has 3 colors. So one color is on this sheet. It's probably part of these are butterflies or moths, I guess. It has 3 colors, so 1 sheet for each color. And I will have special either acetate or tracing paper and special inks that we draw these acetates with, because it has to be light resistant for exposing the screen. It can't just be any old marker. So we're going to do hand drawing ones, and then sometimes we can also make use of photocopies, and actually sometimes the real object. In this case, this person made a border for a textile. She has a photocopy of an antique textile, and then she has a real piece of lace on top of that. And we exposed the whole thing in the darkroom on one of the screens. And the texture of the lace actually came out perfectly on the screen. So when you start to see all these possibilities, you start thinking, wow, I can do this, this, and that. And there's tons of things you can do, really tons of things. So I got a lot of examples here on the table. Maybe I can just show one at a time. This one is an example of our third project, okay, the photograph one. This one would be an example of the first project. With the we're going to do 4 colors, and this is an image of her apartment, the student's apartment. If you're good at pen and ink works beautifully with screen printing. So this student, young man, he was very good with pen and ink and cross-hatching and stippling, and it shows up beautifully with screen printing. So if you're good at that, use it, because it really works well with screen printing. So this is a still life that this student made. This one is an example of the third project. It's her self-portrait, Andy Warhol style, with photo emulsion. This is the first project, but it's her self-portrait too, and it's a drawing one where she drew it. This is an example of the third project with the photo emulsion, and a photograph of a fruit market in Venice. This is another technique. We might do this actually the first week before we even make our own imagery. The very simplest kind of silk screen is just taking some pieces of newspaper, even newsprint, and just cutting something out and laying it under the screen. And the ink, when you pass the ink across, the pieces of paper will stick to the screen, and you can print for about an hour with that simple stencil. So we're going to try that just for fun, just for play. Doesn't have to be anything serious, just to learn how to pull a squeegee, basically. And it's fun, and all you need is a piece of newsprint, and that's how this was made. And this is a hand-drawn stencil, nice big motorcycle. And this one was inspired. I want you to also take your inspiration from something in Florence, since you're in Florence. The first one has to be something detailed that you've seen here in Florence. I don't want you to get imagery off the internet. I want you to do your own imagery. This one is from Leonardo da Vinci. His work is all over, especially that year. There was the Da Vinci year a couple of years ago. So you saw Da Vinci shows everywhere. This last year was Raphael. And this is a graphic design one. And she's a graphic design major. I also interview all of you when you first come in the first day, find out what classes you're studying, what's your major interest in art. If you're a graphic designer, I might direct your imagery towards your graphic design. If you're a photographer, more on photography. If you're a textile person, more with textile. So I'm going to try to adapt the class a little bit towards each and every one of you so that we can get as much as you can out of this class. There's just so much to learn. One semester really isn't enough. But you'll get hooked on it and you'll want to do more. Believe me, you will. Let me show a few more. Oh, before I go to that side, let me go to this side of the table. Here's a nice textile. This one on Via di Pepi, or I think it's Via di Pepi. Anyway, in Florence, there's a beautiful hotel called the Mona Lisa Hotel, and the front part is open, and you can walk in, and you see this ceiling with this beautiful imagery on it, and she took inspiration from that ceiling. And this is only a sample, like a scarf sample, but she actually made a number of these different squares that were in the ceiling, because it's kind of a box ceiling. And then there's wooden beams that go in between. She also made a screen with the wooden beams, and she made a large bed quilt, a beautiful large bed quilt with these designs. This is just a small sample of what she did, like a test piece. I didn't say anything yet about the colors. The colors we're using are water-based, thank goodness. They're pigment colors, water-based colors. And as you can see from the examples that I'm going to show you, and I have shown you, they're really nice colors. And you can wash up with water. Don't have to worry about solvents. And they're made for textiles. You just had to add a couple of drops of fixative, and they're fine on textiles. They're beautiful on etching paper, and we will have etching paper for you to use to print on. And there are some other papers that you can use, like rice paper and some other fancy papers, but you would get those yourself. We will give you some etching paper. The pigment colors, I would have the primary colors and the secondary colors, and it's in a little bottle with a concentrate, like drops, and we have a bucket of paste, and you put the paste in a little bowl, and you put a drop of pink, if you want pink, in, and you stir it up, and you look and on some scrap etching paper, we test the colors until we arrive at the color we want. So you have to learn about color mixing. That'll be a big part of our project, is to teach you how to make colors. If you don't already know about primary, secondary colors and how to make them, and complementary colors, this will be part of your learning. We will be doing this with these colors. But I just wanted to point out, for safety reasons, that we have safe colors. They're water-based colors. And you can just wash up with soap and water. But you do need to wear aprons. I believe we will also provide you with a plain apron that you can decorate yourself and put your own designs on it. A muslin apron that you can decorate, and a tote bag, I believe, as well. So this one here shows you, by changing color, you have the same screens, and just by changing colors, how different the same print can look, just by changing colors. So you can have several editions. You can have an edition in this set of colors. You can have an edition in that set of colors. And this one was a set of photographs, actually. And the same person made this one. She was here the whole year, and quite a photographer. And this is not the same sofa, but different photographs of it. And this is still the same artist. I have to pull this one out. Another set of photographs. And this is, the technique here is posterizing. So you take a light, medium, and dark of your photograph. And this is posterizing as well, but the colored in parts of the sofa were done with a hand-drawn stencil. So it's a combination. And also now with the computer, we can easily do the 4-color separation. At this time when we made this, we didn't have that ability yet, but now we can also do the 4-color separation. So there's a lot we can do with photography as well. A lot. The same artist. This one here was used for a textile. She made, I think she made a bed cover or something with it. Get it out. And it's about her apartment. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So this is a paper print of it, but she actually printed it, rows and rows of it, on a coverlet for her bed. And it's about her apartment where she was living in Florence. And it's posterization again with her information about her home, sort of like a little poem, and then some hand-colored in areas with the hand-colored stencils. So she made a large coverlet with that. So that's photo major. And textile majors can do beautiful things with textiles. This was meant for a fabric. So what we designed a unit, and then we designed how it was going to join and fit together. For the textile people, I will also give you some extra lessons on how to make repeats and how to make a unit that's going to fit inside of another unit and make a whole continuous appearance fabric. Now in the factory, they'll have machines that are big enough to cover the whole sheet. Well, we can't do that. We have to make do with this size screen, which is fairly big to handle, believe me. You have to learn how to pull the squeegee, too. And so we have to plan our design for our textiles so that it fits together and locks together side to side, top to bottom, so that when we print the whole fabric, it's all joined together and you can't really tell where it begins and ends. So this is an example of somebody working out their textile design on the paper first, but she printed a beautiful piece of fabric on fabric as well. This is very Florence. And it's the pigeons, which you see everywhere in Florence. So she made a pigeon repeat textile. And it also fits together like here. This part fits down in here, and the sides fit together. And she made a huge piece of fabric with pigeons all over it. And she colored in their eyes and some of their heads. And it came out to be a really delightful, delightful print. Everybody loved it. Actually, figs are a very important fruit here in Florence as well. And this one has a lot of ink and pen and ink work in it. It's cross-hatching and stippling. And so if you're good at pen and ink, this is a nice example of working with pen and ink. Also, this student was an etching student, so it has a sort of etching kind of quality to it as well. The student that did these photographs of the Duomo of Florence was an advanced student, and she was here for a whole full year in Florence. She did 2 semesters. The first semester, she just did all the regular screen printing process. The second semester, she wanted to focus on her photography major, like the other girl. And she had this photograph, and now she was able to do digitally on her computer, and she took this photograph of the back side of the cathedral, and we blew them up really. It took her the whole semester just to do these. It was a lot of work. And this is posterizing with the 3 tones. But all of these different pieces joined together. Oh, here we go. See how that joins together? So we printed all of the separate editions. She did about 10 of them, I think. They look lovely as individual prints, but they also, if you wanted to hang them on a wall, your eye would automatically put the whole image together and you see the whole side of the Duomo really large. But she also printed it joined up together on a piece of linen, a large linen panel. It was really a nice project, a lot of work. And to get the photograph blown up this big, we had to go to one of the printers like Lori. There's a couple of good printing shops here in Florence where you can take your images to be blown up this big, because we can't do it by ourselves this big. So all of these would join together. Oh, this one I think you can see how this one joins. When you're here in my studio, I'll line them all up on a huge table and you can see how they join up. But here you can sort of see. And this also is part of the top part. So I think there was 3 rows with 4 images each, something like that. And it made a huge panel that covered a whole wall. It was a lot of work, but it was worth it. But that would be an example of an advanced student doing a whole semester project. As beginners, I'm going to keep you to smaller size things. Before I show this one, I think I'm going to show some little projects. Okay, some of you students are in graphic design classes, and you have to do like a product design class. Well, even that can be adapted with screen printing. This is like for a box container, and I've had a lot of students design boxes or containers for product designs, labels for objects, and do some things that could also go with one of their other classes, like your product design class. There's also a possibility, if somebody's in ceramics, we can even print on tiles and have them fired in the kiln. I believe there's a ceramics kiln in the studio in a ceramics class. There may be a possibility to even print on ceramic, using the ceramic glazes, not our inks. This is another print, and there's saints and angels and things all over Florence. Well, this is a saint this one actually is from Rome. It's from the Sistine ceiling, one of the figures in the Sistine ceiling, not the ceiling, the wall. And then he put together with some contemporary spacemen. And this is the floor of the Duomo. This is a positive, negative effect. Door knockers. There's lots of great door knockers and gargoyles and all kinds of neat creatures all over the city. You can see I use them in my costume, too. I'm actually going to, on the first week, have you go out and find some little details like these around. They're everywhere. They're just hidden. You have to look for them. We can go on a walk and we can go find some of these gargoyles, door knockers, wine doors, tabernacles, all kinds of interesting characters all over the city of Florence that usually people don't notice sometimes. This one is from the Pantheon in Rome. So I want you to get your ideas from Florence, and as you get to travel, Rome, Siena, Venice. This is one of the symbols that's used. He's made cute, but this is one of the symbols of the trades. This is also something I want to talk about in our first lessons about the trades in Florence, the artigiani trades. They all had their history, and they all had their own symbol. They all had their own saint. And there's one church called Ordo San Michele that has all of these symbols on it, all the symbols of the different trades, the one for the weavers, the one for the wool people, the one for the metal workers. It's all around the church with their patron saint. And we'll take a walk down there, and I'll explain what each and every one of them is. Because textiles and metalworking are really a very important part of Florence's history and help make Florence rich. This is from a museum, the Specula, the fish display. So you can get your ideas from everywhere. And like I said, there's all kinds of saints and strange martyrs and things around that you can get image from. This one is a woman martyr called Saint Agatha, and supposedly she had her breast cut off, so this is her. More the cypress tree, the cedar trees, cypress trees. A more obvious inspiration with the Botticelli. Lots of graffiti to get inspiration from in Florence as well. More angels. They're everywhere. A really nicely rendered rooster with lots of stipple and detail. A self-portrait kind of in an Andy Warhol style. This person got this inspiration from Holland when she went on a semester break to Holland. There's some metallic paint in here. I have some metallic paint. We won't use a lot of it, but we have a little bit of it, okay, for accents only. And again, using saints, but this one is getting a haircut. Yeah, you shouldn't have to look very far to get ideas. Florence is just full of things. This is a design for a textile. This photograph here has many colors in it, many layers. This took a lot of work to plan and produce it, but you can see you can almost get like a painting, but you have to work at it. And this student decided to do like Andy Warhol type of effect. And I think this was the exchange machine, the change machine. And this was some kind of construction site that he saw here in Florence. And this was for parking. And he took his photograph, and then he added one color to each one besides the photograph. And it has like an Andy Warhol kind of effect. This one is one of mine. I'm a textile person, so my photographs got turned into fabric instead of paper. When you come to the studio, you will be going through this very large green door. So this is kind of a map how to get to the studio. But I will probably come to the school and accompany you here the first time you come to study. So this is the door to this studio. This is the map of Via Guelfa, where the studio is. And these are my feet coming in on the pavement into the school. And I turn everything into quilts or sewing or fabrics. This is another one I did, but this one's more paper. See if I can get it out. This was a different studio that I was in. Same on Via Guelfa, so I have the Via Guelfa map. And this was this was the window above the door, and there was this curtain right here. I took the real curtain out of the window, and I placed it on the screen and exposed it to the light. And it picked up every bit of weaving and every bit of lace effect that was in the curtain. And that was the background. And on top of that, this is on a piece of silk, and this is on a piece of silk. And they were sewed onto the paper. It was a mixed media. Okay. So we can mix media. There's a lot of mixed media we can do. Another, we can print on leather, we can print on ceramic. We can print on some wood pieces also, besides paper and fabric.